25 states are within that flood-prone area in Nigeria, and they're at risk of flooding. We've seen some heads up, it would seem, earlier in the year, in February, and it's important to keep these conversations on so that we're not caught unawares. The National Emergency Management Agency yesterday had this National Emergency Coordination Forum, essentially bringing together all stakeholders in the nation's capital to talk about this issue. But on the show this morning, we're breaking it down. Now, those are the states from the 2024 annual flood outlook that are at high risk of flooding. There are more states on that list. So we're breaking it down to the states this morning, just to look at what states are doing to ensure that the floods do not wreak the havoc we've seen time and again. On the program this morning, we're joined by the Commissioner for Environment in Ogun State, Ola Oresoya, joins us virtually from the nation's capital, Abuja. Welcome to the morning brief, sir.
Thank you very much.
We saw what some would say the testing of the microphone in February. There was rains, it was like flash floods, and we saw what the floods did in Ogun State. Ogun State is perennially flooded from time to time, particularly those border areas, Isheri and the rest. I understand that there are plans to construct thousands of drainage channels, culverts, and the rest. So give us a picture of just how prepared Ogun State is for the flooding, which will definitely come or has come already this year.
Oh, yes, definitely the flood will come, and Ogun State is prepared, and that's why we gave the flood alert. And flood alert we will try to remind ourselves, both the government and the people, and even our contractors, our farmers, on our obligations and how to manage the season very well. Once we know the flood will come, the next thing is how prepared are we individuals. So on the government side, yes, we try to explain our preparedness, and we try to advise farmers. And our flood alert this year focus mainly on how to maximize the rain, where we're looking at the positive side of the rain, not the negative side. Negative side is the flood, which we all look at but for us in Ogun State, we're looking at the positive side because we believe what we need to do to avoid flooding. Yes, on the government side, we're trying our best, and we believe our people also can complement that through various things that we emphasize there. I don't know if you want me to go ahead with those areas. Okay,
I'd like to speak to the specifics, really. And I mentioned the construction of almost 3,000 meters of drainage channels, mini bridges, and culvert across the 3 senatorial zones of the state. So the question is, has that been done? Now, the essence of this conversation, Honorable Commissioner, is to enlighten people and also raise awareness across states so people can begin to think, oh, this is what we need to do, this is what government is doing, so all of us can work together. So you can speak to just how far work has been done regarding those mini bridges, drainage channels, culverts, and you can talk about the positive side as well.
All right, thank you. The first thing is understanding the pattern, the flood pattern in our state, in Ogun State. We have our peculiarities. The northern part, the flood pattern in the northern part of the state is usually the flash flood because of the hilly nature of the northern part of the state. While in the southern part of the state, which is the area you're referring to, especially the border towns between Ogun and Lagos, those are areas where we have what we call the coastal flooding. The coastal flooding comes usually from around September, October, and it's as a result of the high tide that disallow the flow from Ogun River into the lagoon. So you have a retention of water flowing from Ogun River. And don't forget that Ogun River traverses the Ogun State, and I think that the state takes its name from that river. And we have various tributaries from the state that feeds into Ogun River. So we are the main collector that cuts across the state into Lagos State. So if the river if there's a high tide, then there's a lockdown, and then you have the coastal flooding around that area. So preparedness, in the northern part of the state, we have to open up the channels where this water can flow through, and so that we make sure that the runoff from the torrential rain that will come between March and July, July has been the peak period for this rain. This high volume within a short time can have an easy passage on its own, so that the constrictions along those passages have to be removed. Naturally, flash flood will remove or will attack anything that is obstructing it, because it can be very destructive on its own. It's an abrasive flow. It wipes off anything along this way and causes erosion. So, but if in some areas where you have buildings along that channels, we remove them, remove the buildings, and we remove all these shanties along the drainage channel, and even people dumping refuse. Because of the high runoffs, people are tempted to dump refuse in it, believing that these runoffs will carry the refuse downstream to somewhere else. So we make sure that the drainage channel, that's what we call desilting. We continue to desilt these channels. Some of them are arch channels, some of them are line channel. Line means that the one with the concrete are the lines one, the one without the concrete are the arch channels. Silting continues every year, and we make sure that we continue to desilt most of these channels periodically. So that is going on. That is what we stated in our outlook, the total length of desilting areas running 2 kilometers that we're going to do. It's not just the state government, even the local government are encouraged to do the same thing. And the communities, these channels are about 3 of channels, the drainage channels, the primary, secondary, and the tertiary trunks. So the secondary and the tertiary trunks are the main responsibilities of the government on its own, while the tertiary channels, which is what we call gutter in front of people's houses, is the responsibility of the community and residents. And we ensure that the local government must compel people to make sure they clean their own tertiary channels. So that is for the flood, that is the flash flood, and that our preparedness continues. It's a routine assignment, and we must continue with that one. But the other one, which is the coastal flood, comes naturally because there's a natural event that comes with it. And the majority of the areas where we have these coastal flooding, they are mainly wetlands. These are wetlands, and people have developed these wetlands knowingly or unknowingly. Some people even got approval with a poor sense of judgment from the previous government, giving approval to people building on wetlands, which are the prevalent area within these shorelines and within the border towns in Ogun State, talking about Alagbole, Kara, Isheri, all of those areas. They are mainly floodplains, and people have approval. Yes, you can build in floodplains, but there are specifications that you must be given before you build on floodplains. You need to be advised on the kind of elevation you must have around that area. Majority of the people build there, those even from government estates, those who have approvals, they build there without the knowledge of the kind of elevation under which they must exist along the floodplain. So now we have inherited the problem. All we are doing right now is adaptation, and making sure that we advise people to leave those areas during this period to avoid any form of casualty. Otherwise, you elevate yourself in your room. I mean, restructure your house and make sure you elevate above the normal base. So this water will come every year.
And those concerns are valid, Mr. Oresanya. But besides the deluge that is experienced between March and September every year, residents along these floodplains that you have described also live in perpetual fear of the release of water from the Ono Dam that is managed by the Ogun River Basin Development Authority. It seems as if that the federal government and the Ogun State government were not on the same page as far as that release of water is concerned, being the reason for the release of for the flood. Are they in agreement now? And is there, are there conversations about how to manage the release of water, or an alternative, coming up with an alternative solution, permanent solution that will stop that flooding as a result of the release of that water?
Well, the issue of release of water is what we monitor on daily basis with Ogun River Basin, and especially this season. Whether water will be released from the dam or not is all taking a decision between the devil and the deep blue sea. If you don't release water from the dam can crash and make the situation worse. Don't forget that dams are actually part of the reason why you have dams is to control flooding downstream, to detain water and use that water for irrigation and for other purposes upstream, and even for supply of water potable water to the community, and the water is retained. But during the peak of the rainy season, you have excess water that must be released. And what that water will do, normally, if there is no high tide, the water will naturally flow through the Ogun River pathway and empty itself into the lagoon. But by the time you have the high tide, the release of the water will aggravate the retention, the spread around the floodplain. And it will want to reticulate itself and retain itself around that flood. That's why it's called the floodplain. That plain is there so that during the high tide, normally, that is where the water will stay until the tide goes down and the water will move, regress into the lagoon. So, but because people are already staying there, it makes things worse. So right now, what we do with the Ogun River Basin Authority and the community, and we were all there, it was a joint press release with the Ogun River Basin and the Ogun State government, is that, okay, fine, the water will be released more often towards the period when we are expecting the arrival of the high volume of water. And so that by the time they are releasing the water during the peak, the tide period, the high tide period, the volume they'll be releasing that time will be lower. And I think that this year we're going to have a close monitoring with the Ogun River Basin Authority. We have the expected time of arrival of the high water volume coming upstream. Don't forget that this water is coming, is transboundary. It's coming from the northern part of Africa and coming to Sokoto, coming down to Ogun State. And Ogun State is the one that empties it through Lagos into the lagoon. So Ono River is very, very important for us. And it's not Ono River alone that is surging to Ogun State, onto the Ogun River. We have the Ikere Gorge Dam also that discharges right into Ogun River. And we have several tributaries without dams. Then they come through this Ogun River and they go straight to the lagoon. So these areas are very, very vulnerable. The shore, the coastal towns, they're very vulnerable. And we're not leaving them alone in this. So it is not just Ono Dam alone. Ono Dam release of water can only aggravate what must happen naturally.
Let's talk long term now, because it's like repeat and rinse. Issues of flooding and rain is not a surprise. It shouldn't be a shock. The magnitude is what can be relatively different across board. So, because we know that some of these things are human-induced, when you talk about urban planning and poor planning and all of that, as a state government, what are you doing in the long term to minimize as much as possible? As I said, some you can't really predict how far-reaching, but some you can see clearly that with this being here, every year this thing happen is going to, cause problem, maybe loss of lives and property. So on a long term, how does the Ogun State government intend to reduce the things that are controllable to manage this situation?
Thank you very much. If you look at this, what we're doing right now, before you get approval, building approval in Ogun State, you have to get a drainage clearance. The drainage clearance, what we do in drainage clearance for the Ministry of the Environment is to look at your drainage channel. We look at the level of the collector river or the water body around your community. If the level of the main river is at 2 meters, for example, your flow, your building must be above that river. So your drainage plan must have shown the elevation under which you have to operate. So before you get building approval in Ogun State, you must have what we call the drainage permit. The drainage permit will have specified for you the elevation under which you must operate. You must build your drainage channel in a particular area. And where your drainage will empty into will give advice. And so the physical planning people will compel you to make sure you channel your drainage into a particular collector, secondary collector bodies that will take you to a tertiary one. So drainage permit is compulsory in Ogun State. Now, two, if you must build in floodplain in Ogun State, also the permit, will specify completely for you that you can only have a foundation at a particular level in floodplains. Or some of the floodplains, yes, we can build there, but it must be under certain specifications. So it's a controlled development in Ogun State right now, having a flood management in mind. And apart from that, what we do again is that we give advice on the weekly basis now on the rainfall pattern. Not just for flood control alone, for farmers, so that farmers can know when to plant, when to harvest, and the rest of it. And construction workers also, because this affects construction workers. So it's the flood, the rainfall pattern in Ogun State right now is to advise both farmers, construction workers, even school children. We advise day schools must shut down and not open because children will be tempted to walk in the flash flood. So we give advice to the Ministry of Education on when to advise certain schools, particularly in the critical 16 local government in Ogun State.
We don't want to see what happened last year where a 14-year-old died during flash floods. So it's important. But two clarifications I need to seek from you. One, those 3,000 mini bridges, culverts, and drainage channels, have they been built already, or they're still being built?
It's a work in progress. What we just said is that we already have approval and we have a fund released for them. So it's as good as it's not a matter of time to start seeing those bridges there. So some of them have commenced. For example, in the Isheri area, Kara Isheri, we've started the dredging, the rechannelization of the river from River Valley Estate across even the Lagos end to make sure that water from that area will regress easily. Right. So that the kind of devastation we had last year around that River Valley Estate will not have that devastation this year. So if you go there right now, and I'm sure
pardon me, will they be built just in time before the peak of the flooding? All of them?
Exactly.
All the 3,000?
This point is channelization. It's an art channels. We are opening up the art channels with swan bogies that are working right there now. They've been working. It's a very long channel. And I'm sure for that area, which is a coastal area, the outlook for the problem should be around September and not just now. It's going to be around September. But before September, this thing will have been finished, will have been completed.
Now, sir,
hopefully.
Construction of drainage channels are good, but I wonder if that would be an enduring solution to the peculiar flood challenge in Ogun State. And as you have rightly pointed out, Ogun River has many tributaries. So is the government, in conjunction with perhaps the federal government, considering experts' continuing call for a consideration of the dredging of the Ogun River?
Absolutely, absolutely. All I've mentioned now are the short-term, immediate measures that we're doing. There is still a medium and the long-term measures. The medium-term measure is about having a standard drainage plan, okay, for Ogun State itself, so that all over the state, so that we can have our channels clearly defined, elevations clearly defined. So an integrated drainage master plan, we are developing that, and that will probably be ready. And we are about giving that to a well-informed company, global consultancy company that is going to do that for us in Ogun State. And we are doing this in conjunction with the federal government. What we're going to do in Ogun State is between us and federal government. Then the rechannelization of the Ogun River itself, yes, it's one of the key things that must happen. And I can tell you it's not a small thing. It's a major, major one. And it's going to going to have a good impact between Ogun State and Lagos State. So it's between the two states. But we are pushing it so fast in Ogun State because we have the greater exposure than Lagos State to this river impact. So there are other medium and the long-term programs going on between Ogun State and federal government.
So are there things like some level of support for people that, sometimes get affected by this flooding time and again? As you said, sometimes it goes out of control.
Well, to reduce this potential for annual lamentation, that is why we give these advisories, and we make sure that we give early enough to let people know what will happen in your area. I mean, if, for example, we are telling you that in September, October, you are going to have flood in your area, we expect you by now start planning. Either you reconstruct your house, elevate, maybe you want to use temporary plans to elevate yourself, or prepare for the plans. Just like Noah, prepare for the rain that's on the by the way anyway. So it's like given the information. So we expect you to act on those information so that by the time the rain comes, in September, the flood will come. The coastal flooding, it is where you have this devastation of retention of water for a longer time. And that is where we want people to evacuate. Have an alternative residence before now, or elevate, so that we will reduce this lamentation. Right. But just like you rightly said, there are some recalcitrant residents who will still be doubting that nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. And when it did not happen, they go on air, they go on social media, start lamenting. Government is doing nothing. Government is doing nothing for me. What have you done with the advice given to you? What have you done with it? We've given enough, almost 6 months notice to tell you when this problem will come. So, but for those people, we still have a moral obligation towards them. We cannot allow them to die, so we must evacuate them and take them to our camps.
Well, Mr. where they naturally, the government will need to take the lead and ensure that funds that are budgeted for environmental projects mitigation, they're appropriately spent transparently, and so people see that these monies are being put to use. The other part of the clarification I was going to seek is about the Ono Dam. It's been said that we're wasting the potentials of that dam. It could be used for irrigation, could be used for power generation. There's even a tourism angle, but there's so much more that could happen. So on the one hand, is there controlled release now, maybe on a daily basis? Is that what is happening right now? And what are the plans? We're winding down anyway, but to ensure that the water is put to good use, generate electricity, use it for irrigation.
Well, yes, I agree with you that the potential is enormous for the dam, and I think that's why the dam is constructed there. And as more dam as we can construct in Ogun State is welcome. There are other potential dams we can have that will give us electricity, irrigation, support the food security programs, and the rest of it, and even tourism, just like you said. But I think that's a decision. Yes, we can give advice to the Ministry of Water, Federal Ministry of Water Resources to maximize this. But we are working in conjunction with them, and I can assure you that there's a control release now, and we are working with the leadership of the Ogun River Basin Development Authority, because we feel the impact, our people feel the impact most, and that they cry to us in Ogun State. So we make sure this time around the release of water is controlled. I can assure the rest of the state, please bank on it. We're not going to leave Ogun River Basin Development Authority alone. We are working together with them during the period where they're going to have this devastation impact. Before we know the tide will come, we'll tell them what to do before then, and that we'll work together. Or don't let me use the word, we'll tell them what to do, but we work together. There must be synergy between us, and we'll ensure that we stay ahead of that synergy to make sure that they do the right thing. Absolutely. And the impact will be.
Thank you so much. I hope we can take this word to the bank, so people at least, not the river bank this time, so they know that there's controlled release of water as you've promised, and there's more partnership. Yeah. We'd like to thank you so much, Commissioner for Environment, Ogun State, Mr. Ola Oresonya. I wish you the best as we head towards the peak season of the flooding.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, there's been so much conversation around the economy, particularly with the latest cybersecurity levy that was just announced. What is the issue really? Is this government doing what it says it will do or otherwise? We'll find out in a moment. Stay with us.